never be a gangster. Anger in his heart, but he'll never be a gangster. If you move into his neighborhood, he'll never make a sound. Ooh.
I've been reading your stuff for, 20 years probably, but in the last year, I've noticed an increasingly, I think it's fair to say, partisan turn from you. And so I looked up your bio, and it describes you as a senior writer at Newsweek, which suggests journalism. Do you believe that you're practicing journalism?
When did you stop beating your wife? What are you talking about?
Well, I'll show you what I'm talking about. I read your Twitter feed, and this is the kind of stuff I'm reading on it. At one point, you ask of conservatives, why do they hate America? You describe Trump as, quote, stupid and lazy. You refer to dumbass Trumpers. You say this to Kellyanne Fitzpatrick, F you. You say this to Trump voters, go F yourself.
I mean, one of the things I want to make sure of, you have a real habit of taking a lot of things out of context.
I can read you the tweets.
And so if you're going to talk about a tweet, let's talk about a tweet. Read me what it says, and we can talk about it. But let's not just sit here and take a couple of words here and there. Now, if you're talking about the
would you want me to read you some of your tweets?
Read me one. Let's talk about the one that bothers you the most.
Well, I mean, there are a lot. And it's not that they bother me.
But I can't answer a question about a lot of tweets. Give me an answer. Give me a question.
Well, you're entirely entitled to your opinion. My only point is that you ought to label yourself as what you are, which is an advocate. And so you say things like this. How can Trumpsters defend a president?
Let's stop for a second. You won't give me an example.
I'm trying to give you one right now.
Then give me... Here, you know what? Let's play the game another way. I spent a little while just sort of doing some research on you.
Why don't you answer? Let me ask you this question, if you would.
Tucker Carlson falsehoods. And I can sit here and I can read them to you one at a time. I appreciate it. And we can talk about what you have to say.
That's pretty good.
Or you can give me an example of what you're talking about.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. You wrote this on September 12th of this year. You said, this is a tweet, I tweet so many attacks on our bad, lazy work of the press, I doubt I'll ever be voted to win a journalism award again, which is also a humble brag, by the way. But the next day you say, quite ironically, and I'm quoting, I believe Trump was institutionalized in a mental hospital for a nervous breakdown in 1990, which is why he won't release his medical records. Do you see a little irony that on one day you're criticizing the press for being lazy and inaccurate, and the next day you yourself are being lazy and inaccurate?
Let me give you what the question, why did you send that tweet? I will answer it for you now. I've been covering Donald Trump. I started writing about him in the late 1980s. At that time, I obtained his medical records from his real doctor, not from this guy who sent out a medical report then. It showed that in 1982, he was given a very heavy prescription for an amphetamine derivative, and he remained on that prescription for many years. I knew from people inside the Trump organization that they were deeply concerned about his condition, that he was getting reckless, that he was getting impulsive, that he wasn't sleeping, that he was speaking with these sort of great variations of grandeur, that he could do anything. And in 1990, because he did so many deals that were so reckless, his whole empire was going into bankruptcy, and he was going through a divorce, and I was told that there was, and now, let me say, I'm talking about reporting process. So I'm saying, here is what I was told.
Was he in a mental hospital or not in 1990? You allege that he was. Was he or wasn't he? He wasn't.
I mean, Tucker, if you don't want me to answer the question,
I'm asking you the question. Story. You said he was in a mental hospital in 1990. Was he or wasn't he?
Can I finish,
it's a really simple question. I'm asking you to finish. Please answer the question.
If you don't like the answer, don't have guests. Tucker, would you like me to answer the question or not? If the answer is no, say so. Do you want me to answer the question or not? Just give me a yes or no. Do you want me to answer the question?
Yeah, I want you to answer this question. Was he in a mental hospital in 1990, as you allege, or was he not?
Or you can let me answer your question.
I think you may be coming undone. How about this? I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer this question. Do you have evidence that he was institutionalized in a mental hospital in 1990? 30 seconds.
Now, okay, I will say this, because it's a message I've got from people from the CIA. I know a lot of officers, I know a lot of agents, I've been in their homes, and they're really delivering this to you and to Donald Trump. These are people who have sacrificed a lot for this country. They
What's
go
the
through
message?
into the CIA every day. They walk past that wall with 117
I get it. What's the
black
message?
stars. If you're going to say that we can't talk about the fact that there are 117 patriots whose lives have been lost serving this country, that's fine.
I'm starting to have concerns about you, Kurt.
Right now,
tell me what the secret
people
message
in
from the
Russia
CIA is.
who are putting their lives on the line, who are to be sources of information for the CIA. That information is coming in. That information is then being put together by analysts who are not well paid, and they do very hard work, and they do it because they are patriots.
I'm sorry, we're out of time, Kurt, and I don't mean this in a cruel way. I would have real concerns if I were one of your editors, and I mean that. I'm not calling anyone a liar, but I am saying I'm concerned about your behavior on this show tonight. But thanks a lot for joining us.
That's because you won't let me answer your questions. I don't think anybody's fooled.
So news organizations publish untrue content all the time, but to their credit, it's usually by accident. On Tuesday, BuzzFeed chose to release a 35-page dossier on Trump, whose contents even BuzzFeed's editors admitted could not be verified. In fact, the publication said explicitly, quote, "The report contains errors." BuzzFeed's conduct may be among the worst excesses of yellow digital journalism, but many are arguing their decision to publish that piece was justified. We're joined now by Matthew Ingram of Fortune magazine, who authored a piece today defending BuzzFeed. Matthew, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
One of my favorite reporters, Michael Tracy, wrote something this morning that made me think of this. He said, and I'm quoting, he said, WikiLeaks relentlessly attacked for publishing verified, authentic information. BuzzFeed is cheered for publishing what is a total sham. You have been critical of WikiLeaks for publishing emails that did not belong to them, and yet you're cheering the publication of material that is clearly wrong. Why?
In fact, I was supportive of WikiLeaks. I support their attempts to publish documents that would otherwise go unpublished. I support BuzzFeed's decision to do the same when those documents are clearly part of an important story. They said they were unverified. They didn't say that everything in there was true. All they said was these documents are being discussed at the highest levels. Senior intelligence agents have effectively said this source is credible, and yet no one is showing you this document. I think they did a public service.
Well, first of all, I just read a piece that you wrote criticizing the release of those WikiLeaks emails. But to the point of on BuzzFeed, there are lots of things that are discussed privately, especially during campaigns, and you're a working journalist, so you know this well, that we don't publish because we're not certain if they're true. And the bar is higher when they're personal and they're damaging to people's reputations. And isn't it our job to verify their veracity? Isn't that why we exist? Isn't that why we have reporters in the first place?
Sure it is, and I'm not saying that that shouldn't happen. In fact, BuzzFeed is working and has been working for months, according to Ben Smith, to verify the things that are in that document. So it's not that by publishing they're saying we accept all of these things as true. What they're saying is that this document has been presented to the president, has been presented to senior members of the intelligence community, and all the reporting before BuzzFeed said there is this document, but we're not going to tell you what's in it. But it's really important. And in fact, it could affect the entire Trump administration. It could call into question the entire government. Isn't that something that people should be able to see?
Well, I don't know. If it's not true, it's not going to affect the Trump administration, presumably, unless the media trot it out there and treat it as if it's significant. Look, you know as well as I, we hear all kinds of things. I've heard all sorts of things about Barack Obama's romantic life, for example. I have no idea if any of them are true. I hope they're not. I would never report that. They're probably lies spread by his opponents. That often happens. Isn't it irresponsible to pass on something you can't verify? I don't understand how you couldn't see that as a journalist. Let me just say to your first point, journalists publish information, as I said at the outset, all the time that's wrong. They trust sources when they shouldn't. But they almost never publish information that they know to be inaccurate, as BuzzFeed did and admitted in the introduction to the piece. Second, we don't know much about
there were place names that were inaccurate. There were place names that were inaccurate. There were people's names that were inaccurate. That doesn't mean the central facts of the document are inaccurate. It just means the person was in a hurry.
But we don't know that any of it is true, and some of it apparently is false. It's been denied by everybody involved in it, and there's no evidence that any of it is true. And by the way, it was not written by any senior intelligence official. It was written as campaign opposition research by a private sector guy in Great Britain. We think That's all we know. He was not a member of MI6. No CIA officer wrote this. This is not official intelligence information. And by the way, the intel agencies scoop up all kinds of rumor, innuendo, disinformation, as you know, all the time. We would never publish that if it hurt Hillary Clinton, ever, would we?
I think lots of organizations would, and I think lots of organizations effectively did exactly that. So why is this different?
Name a news organization. Well, then name one. You just made the allegation. I have literally no idea what you're talking about. I covered the campaign pretty closely. Name a major news organization that published knowingly untrue information about Hillary Clinton that came from an intelligence source. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're saying BuzzFeed knows this to be untrue.
I'm saying they know that certain facts in this dossier are provably untrue, and they have not proven a single fact in here, and they're conceding it. So your justification appears to be, well, people are talking about it.
Did every detail of every Hillary Clinton story, was it verified by the journalistic organizations that published those stories? Yes or no?
No. There were details, however,
so then why is that acceptable and this is not? This is from a senior intelligence source.
I'll tell you. No, it's not.
If you read that Wall Street Journal story, this guy was a senior MI6 agent, decades of experience in Russia. This is not a guy who just wandered in off the street
and said
he heard something in Moscow about Donald Trump.
This was not written by a senior MI6 official. This was written by a guy who works for a corporate intelligence company in London who may or may not have worked for British intelligence. He is not a member of British intelligence. He did not write this as a member of British intelligence. A. B. Not one
He was a member of British intelligence.
Not when he wrote this.
Is the Wall Street Journal story true?
And nobody has said that British intelligence came up with this dossier. I think you are factually wrong on that point. British intelligence
is the Wall Street Journal story about who produced this correct?
I'm merely saying this is not a product of British intelligence. It is the product of a private company in London. A. B.
Yes.
To Hillary's emails, not a single one was proven wrong. Not one. And so, by the way, lots of news organizations passed on it. But when this is proved totally false, not one person is saying this is true. There's not one person to stand up and say this is true, including the man who purportedly wrote it. So would you publish this yourself if you were running a news organization?
Yes.
Then you have low standards. I'm sorry. We devalue our credibility when we publish things that we know aren't true and can't prove are true. To pass on something like this is not a defense of Trump. I would say this about Obama and Hillary.
This is a document that made up a briefing by all the senior intelligence agencies in the United States for the President of the United States. This is an important document that's been circulating through the highest levels of the U.S. government.
You're throwing words around you don't understand.
It's been the subject of letters from senators. This is a document that people need to see.
This came across John McCain's desk, and he passed it by his own admission to the director of the FBI, who sent it up the chain because who knows what this is. Not one person has said it's true. Not one person has said, I believe this is true. Not one person implicated in it has said, I have evidence that it's true. There's no evidence at all that it's true. It's almost certainly false. You know it. And for political reasons, you think it's okay. And I'm just saying that devalues journalism. That's my only point.
According to a senior BBC reporter, he has a source that has made the same allegations.
All right.
That's two sources now. Are you saying that BBC is reporting things that aren't?
I don't even know who this guy. I wouldn't be at first. I don't even know who you're talking about. If evidence comes in that this is true, if anybody involved in this can say, I was there, I know this is true, here's the evidence, I'll be the first one to say, wow, Donald Trump, what's this about? But it doesn't exist yet, and so we shouldn't be throwing around hearsay. We exist to stop hearsay, not perpetuate it. I'm out of time. I'm sorry. Matthew, thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks.